I want to tell you about my new company. In this video, I'm going to briefly explain what the new company is, as well as a test run that I did to show the results. But first, to tell you a little bit about myself, I grew my last company to over 200 employees, and we help some of the largest organizations in the world improve their operations and save money. I'm really proud of what I accomplished there. However, this new company is about saving lives. So let me tell you a little bit more about it. As you know, the number one goal is to save lives, but we also help people live healthier lives today and hopefully prevent chronic illnesses in the future. So in order to understand my company, it's important to understand what doctors do. Doctors have some great tools at their disposal. Number one is they can use drugs and supplements and prescribe these things to their patients. They can do surgeries and do other procedures to help their patients, and they can use diagnostic tools. There's another tool that you may not have heard of, and it's called lifestyle education. Basically, the idea behind this is they are teaching their patients how to use their own changes that they can make themselves to improve their health. And these things are nutrition and sleep and exercise and other things like that. What are the top killers in the US? Here's the list. And of these top killers in the US, all of these can be either prevented or improved with lifestyle changes. So it is a really important tool to be able to use nutrition and sleep and all of these other things to help patients live healthier lives. And if we look at diabetes specifically, around 60% of those cases could have been prevented just through nutrition alone. We're going to talk about why lifestyle is so important and unfortunately why it's so neglected in the US. So few people in the US actually get any lifestyle education from their doctors. And it's really not the doctor's fault. There's a total lack of reimbursement, which means that doctors don't get paid really to teach their patients about nutrition. And another big problem is that it's just too time consuming. One doctor told me that his hospital system won't even allow him to do this because it takes too much time away from other things that could be making the hospital money. Another big issue is that nutrition isn't taught in medical school. In fact, there isn't a single question on the medical exams about nutrition. The next thing is that the medical system just isn't set up to prevent diseases. It's set up to react to diseases. And it's much better to prevent a disease than to try to cure it afterwards. So let's talk about what the solution is, and it is my new company called Evidence-Based Nutrition. We provide a 5-week challenge, and this 5-week challenge is kicked off with biomarker testing. This is a lipid panel such as cholesterol, as well as blood glucose and other tests that we would like to provide in the future as well. And after that, we teach everybody in the class about nutrition and how they can improve nutrition in their lives. And then we do a final biometric testing so they can see the improvements they've made during this class. And we also provide fantastic resources to make this transition easier so they can make these better decisions throughout their lives, whether they're at a restaurant or at home. And we provide support and community. And this is how we make the difference. So let me tell you a little bit about this education piece because it's really important. We teach the Mediterranean style diet. What I love about the Mediterranean style diet is it's not extreme. Unlike keto and vegan, you're not cutting out things entirely. Instead, what you're doing is you're making improvements for whatever cuisine you like. Even if you only like Indonesian food or Mexican food, you can still eat a Mediterranean style diet. We also teach this because it is the scientific consensus. And what that means is the top dietetic and nutritional organizations in the world recommend the Mediterranean style diet. And the reason why they do that is because it has been shown to prevent, cure, or improve illnesses. In fact, this is a partial list of the diseases that it can either prevent, cure, or improve. So the Mediterranean style diet is very important. We also teach how to remove ultra-processed food and hyperpalatable foods, which have been shown over and over again in recent years to be problematic for our health. And then we teach about how to break down the misconceptions about health and beauty, which, as you know, we're surrounded by this, and it's really important that we discuss this so people can have a healthy mindset and make the right changes. So you might be wondering, this all sounds great, but does it actually work? And the answer is yes. And the reason why I can say that is because we did a trial run. We did it at CrossFit Sandy, which is my local gym, And we had a big variety of people. We had people that were young and old. We had people that were great athletes to your average Joe. And we also had people that were already very health conscious and people that ate McDonald's for just about every meal. So we saw the whole spectrum. And a little bit of a spoiler alert, everybody saw improvements. So let me tell you about these improvements. Because we did biometric testing, we could see the beginning and end results of their biometrics. The first one I want to talk about is LDL cholesterol. Your LDL cholesterol shows your risk for diseases like heart attacks and strokes and so many other diseases that the list could really go on and on. That's why cholesterol is so important. It's at the top of this list. At the beginning of class, 14 people had high cholesterol. In other words, over half of the people that did the class had high cholesterol. By the end of class, only 6 people had high cholesterol. And of those 6, almost everybody was getting pretty close to having normal levels of cholesterol. So it made a huge impact there. And if we want to talk about what would be done in a medical setting, typically doctors use a drug called a statin. So a common statin would be a lovastatin or a pravastatin. That would be 20 milligrams a day. And you would expect to see for this population a drop in cholesterol between 21 and 32 milligrams per deciliter. So what kind of a drop did we see? Well, on average, we saw a drop of 18.5. In other words, just underneath what a standard statin dose would be, which is a huge deal. And that was only in 5 weeks. And I really believe that we could see a continuous drop if we continued the class just a little bit longer. So the next metric I want to tell you about was glucose. Glucose is an indicator for metabolic diseases such as type 2 diabetes, and it can also be a measure of inflammation in the body. So at the beginning of class, 5 people had high glucose. And at the end of class, no one had high glucose. And that was the power. It turned around every single one of those cases. Next one I want to talk about is blood pressure. Blood pressure is also an indicator of future risk of stroke and heart attack, as well as just all around mortality. So that is something that's important that we should all be focused on improving. So at the beginning of the challenge, 6 people were hypertensive for their systolic blood pressure, and 2 people were hypertensive for their diastolic blood pressure. And at the end of class, only 1 person was hypertensive in their systolic blood pressure, and their blood pressure had come down. And so we saw a big improvement there as well. Last thing I want to talk about is weight. Now, weight was not a big focus of the class because I think there are biometrics that are a lot more important. However, because so many people in the class told me that they are trying to lose weight, I thought I should include it. What would be a good comparison for weight? Well, I think Ozempic would be. Ozempic's been in the news a lot lately, and if you take a 2 milligram dose for 40 weeks, according to this study, you would see an average weight loss of 0.35 pounds a week. So that was what is directly from Ozempic's website. Now let's compare it to the results that we got. We saw an average weight loss of 4.2 pounds. If we look at that on a per week basis, that would be 0.8 pounds, so over double what they saw in Ozempic's trial. Obviously, those are different populations, but it's just a good comparison to see that we saw great weight loss during that time as well. And not everybody in the class even wanted to have weight loss. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. So now that we talked about the numbers of everybody who participated in the nutrition challenge, I want to talk about a few individuals because after all, this company is about helping individual people live better lives. Beth is an inspiration to me because she is someone who has terminal cancer, but she has not let that get in the way of her lifestyle changes. So she has decided that she's going to come to the gym no matter how she's feeling, even if she had a chemotherapy infusion that day. And the doctors think that that might be why she's lived longer than expected. Now, at the beginning of class, Beth didn't actually know a lot about nutrition, even though she is a nurse herself. And when we measured her cholesterol, it was at 219 milligrams per deciliter, which is over double what you want to see for LDL cholesterol. And she decided that she was going to do everything she could to improve it during class. And after that 5 weeks, she dropped her cholesterol by 88 points, which is a huge drop. Now, she still has her cholesterol higher than what we want it to see, but we think that over the next few weeks, it's going to continue to come down and get to the healthy ranges. Also, her blood pressure came down as well. Now I want to tell you about Dylan. Now, when you see Dylan, he is the top athlete in the gym, and you probably wouldn't think that he might be having some health problems that could be underneath that great facade that he has. But unfortunately, your cholesterol is greatly dictated by your genes. And his father had a heart attack at a young age. So Dylan was quite concerned about this. And sure enough, when we tested his blood, he not only had high cholesterol, but we also found out that he has high blood pressure. So he put everything into practice that he learned in the class. And at the end of the 5 weeks, he dropped his cholesterol and he's getting pretty close to those healthy levels. And I think he's going to be able to do it here pretty soon. And his blood pressure came down to healthy levels as well. Now, Dylan was so grateful that he stood up in the middle of class and just said that he wanted to let everybody know that this class meant a lot to him and that everybody should listen because these changes can really be made if people just put into practice what they learn. Now, he also was one of the few people that came up to me and said that he wanted to gain weight during class, and he did during that 5 weeks. So he was really happy about that. Last person I want to tell you about is Elena, and I want to tell you about her because she started out with great health metrics. And when I showed them to her, she said, I'm surprised because I actually don't feel great. I have a lot of fatigue in the mornings. I have such a hard time getting out of bed. I think that it might have something to do with some hormonal issues. And during that 5-week class, she made some big changes as well. And at the end of the class, she came up to me and was so excited to tell me that she does not have an issue getting up in the morning. She feels like that fatigue has been turned around, and she's working with her doctors on the hormonal issues, and she thinks she's going to see a big improvement there because she already feels better. So that was really exciting to see. Now, I want to take a step back and think about the class overall. I did this risk reduction analysis, and this is a great study because it was based on 400,000 people, and it showed the risk of a cardiovascular event before the age of 75. In other words, how likely is it that you are going to get a stroke or a heart attack based on your cholesterol, your glucose, your blood pressure, your age, and your sex? Well, we were able to find that out for this class. Here are all the people that were in the class, and after running their numbers, we can say with really good confidence that it's quite likely that we prevented one heart attack or stroke in the class. Of course, that only works if people continue with it. But to me, that is so important because I love and care about each one of these people. So speaking of, that was one of the top things that people said in the class, is that they feel like this is sustainable. They feel like they can continue doing this day in and day out because it wasn't an extreme way to eat and live. Also, a lot of people came up to me and wanted to tell me about their shoulder or their knee feeling better, and they felt like their body was less inflamed. I'd love to include that in future biometric testing so we can find out objectively how much inflammation people start with and end with. Also, people said that they love the community, and 4 people came up to me and said that they wanted to share this class with someone else. So I think that this is a company that can really help a lot of people and that people would want to share it with others. Well, now that I've told you about the company, I want to tell you about how you could help me potentially. So if you know any doctors or clinicians, I would love to work with them because I want to make sure that I make something that they would feel confident in sharing with their patients. And I know that's not an easy task. Doctors have a high bar, and they should. And so it's really important to me that I get their feedback. Also, if you want to be involved, if you want to be one of the first people to try this out, I have a wait list. Here's the link and here's the QR code. So if that's something you want to participate in, I would love to get your feedback and be one of the first beta testers out there. In closing, I just want to let you know that I am really excited about this because I think that this company can really help a lot of people, and our #1 core value is going to be health over profits. Thank you so much for listening.